But right now, let's kick things off with the Royal Commission into Defence and Veteran Suicide, the details of which were unveiled today by the Prime Minister Scott Morrison. We know now that 3 commissioners will be in charge of this, chaired by former New South Wales Deputy Police Commissioner Nick Caldis, who led the United Nations investigation into the use of chemical weapons in Syria. James Douglas, a former Queensland Supreme Court judge, and importantly, Dr. Peggy Brown, a psychiatrist and mental health policy leader. This is a very important area, defence and veteran suicide. Veterans are overrepresented in this area, and we've really got to do something about it. If this is something that impacts you or your family, let us know. 1338 882. Are you or were you a veteran or someone in your family who's looking for answers in this very sensitive area? In a moment, I'll be joined by a retired Special Forces Major. But first up, let's go to the Minister for Veterans Affairs, Andrew Gee. Welcome to Perth Live.
Thanks, Mark. Great to be on the program.
Important issue, isn't it? We've got to get this right.
Absolutely. This is a vitally important piece of national work which has commenced today. I took the paperwork over to the Governor-General earlier this morning and he signed off on all of the commissioners and the commencement of the Commission's work. And I think it is a seminal moment in Australia's treatment and care of veterans and their families, both for now and in the present, but also for future generations as well. And I've had already so much feedback. I've only been in the job less than a week, but I've already had a huge amount of feedback on how important this body of work is going to be and the evidence, traumatic though it will be, that this commission will receive and hear. So I think that we need to use this opportunity to hear the evidence, but then bring in lasting change for our veterans and their families, because the truth of the matter is that we have always sent out Australia's best and they have always given their best. But I think the reality is that our country and Australia hasn't always given its best in return in terms of the care of and treatment of our veterans. Look at the Vietnam War, for example, the way our veterans were treated when they came home. That was absolutely appalling. My uncle was a Nasher who went and did his time in Vietnam and then moved to the present day where you've got veterans telling me that they often just feel like numbers, totally demoralised by a system and a bureaucracy. And I can understand it, and I think we've got to make changes, and I don't think that we need to wait until the end of this Royal Commission to make those changes. I think we've got to move on them as soon as this evidence comes in. We've got to be thinking about what changes that we can implement to make life better, not only for the veterans, but also their families, because for a long, long time, it's been the families that have been left to pick up the pieces from shattered lives. And I think as a country, we can be doing better. We have to give them our best. And there's money in the budget to get this Royal Commission going straight away. There's money in the budget for more claims processing officers. But I think the key that we've got to really turn to unlock some of this stuff is cutting through the red tape and the bureaucracy and making sure that this money is well spent, that the resources are being wisely deployed, and that, for example, the 440 new claims processing staff that we're going to put on are actually going to get the job done and assess these claims fairly, but more importantly, faster as well. Most importantly, faster. Get that job done and get the help to where it's needed quickly.
All right, so focusing on this Royal Commission then, we've seen the terms of reference now. We can sort of get a sense of how this is going to play out. Systemic risk factors will be examined. Just elaborate on this. What are they looking into? What are they hoping to find and uncover and improve?
Well, I think they're going to be hearing of individual experiences, and a lot of those experiences are going to be very, very traumatic and heartbreaking. There's no two ways about it. But I think what the Royal Commission will then do is, from these awful experiences, try to make recommendations to improve the lives of veterans and their families. And the Commission is unfettered in the issues that it can look at. So it will be guided by the evidence it hears and the directions that it wants to take. And one of the things about this commission is that the veterans have said that they didn't want people from the defence establishment running the commission. I can understand that. They wanted it to be at arm's length. And I think in Nick Caldis and in Peggy Brown, who has the eminent background in psychiatry, and James Douglas, who's an eminent former judge and jurist, I think between the three commissioners, you've got a very solid and sound balance between mental health, the legal aspect of it, but also the investigative aspect of it as well. And I think having Nick Caldis there, who is a former Deputy Commissioner of the New South Wales Police, he's investigated weapons of mass destruction in Syria. And I think you need an investigator on board for this. You need a bloodhound that can follow the evidence. So I think there's a really good balance there. And it'll be up to the Commission to follow that evidence, but get those recommendations that will make life better for our veterans and their families, because they deserve nothing less than the very best that we can give them.
Andrew Gees, the Minister for Veterans Affairs, newly appointed. Minister, one of the areas that really affects veterans when they finish their service, they seem to slip. Another area they're overrepresented in is homelessness. And I read a figure today that said 1 in 10 rough sleepers is a veteran. I found that a little hard to believe, but, is that an area that, for instance, will be addressed in the Royal Commission? I couldn't really see anything specifically in the terms of reference.
Yeah, the terms of reference do actually refer to housing issues. I haven't got them just in front of me, but I can get that for you. So, yes, the Royal Commission will be able to look at that factor. That is something that I raised with the department here, and I wanted to make sure that was ticked off on. So, yes, that is something that that can be dealt with and can be looked at. And so, obviously, we're trying to get some visibility at the moment on how widespread this problem is. The figures vary, so it depends who you talk to as to what the level of homelessness is. But definitely there is a term of reference in there that deals with the issue of housing for veterans. Mm-hmm. And as a minister, it's something that I will be getting some visibility on as well, because I want to know the extent of this problem and if there is a large problem, what we're going to do to fix it. So the Royal Commission can certainly look into that issue. Busy
time to be taking on this portfolio. So just give us a time frame finally. What's the time frame here for sitting, reporting? How's this going to play out?
Well, the website's up and running now, so if veterans or their families want to make a submission, there is the ability to do that. I think it's www.royalcommission.gov.au/veterans. So I would encourage any veteran out there or family member that wants to share an experience or a story or make a submission and have their voice heard to do so. I think it's really important that we take this opportunity to get as many submissions as possible, and that will also help guide the Commission and the work of the Commissioners. The interim report is due on the 11th of August next year, and then a final report on the 15th of June 23. Now, so it's a 2-year time frame, but one of the things as Minister that I don't want to see is us standing still and saying, well, we've just got to wait until the end of this Royal Commission until we actually do something. I think that as the evidence comes in, there are things that we can be doing here and now. And one of the things that I wanted to be looking at as the Veterans Affairs Minister is also how we make the Department of Veterans Affairs faster in terms of its response times for treatment. So I think I'm going to have a look at whether we need more clinical expertise within the department, what we need to do to take clinical advice. I also want to actually make sure that when new treatments are proven, and there are some very promising new treatments out there, for example, for PTSD, how we get that to veterans quickly and that we don't just get tangled up in red tape. And I think the extra funding in the budget, I think we got an extra $775 million in extra funding in this budget, which is great. But we've just got to make sure that we're not creating layers and layers of bureaucracy, and that our veterans feel that they are treated as humans in this system. And I think sometimes it's the best will in the world. The government's been trying really hard to help veterans, but the feedback that I've had from some veterans, not all, is that when they come off active duty and they are put into the DVA system and they need to seek treatment, sometimes they're shunted from case officer to case officer, There is a backlog of claims that needs to be cleared up, and that needs to happen as soon as possible. We don't need to wait for the Royal Commission to do that.
Yeah.
We're putting on 440-odd new staff to help process veteran compo claims, which I think is really positive. But that's the first part of the equation. The second part of the equation is making sure that those people are working as effectively as they can be for veterans and their family members. That's the key. We've got to take the whippersnipper through the red tape and get help to where it's needed quickly.
Thanks, Minister. Appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me on the show, Mark.
Andrew Gee, the Minister for Veterans Affairs in Canberra at 18 minutes after 4. What do you think? Are you affected? And what are your thoughts on this Royal Commission? If they could do half of that and implement some of this before it's even finished, that'd be a great start. 133 882 is the number. Heston Russell is a retired Special Forces Major and founder of a group called Voice of a Veteran. He joins us now. Hi, Heston.
Hey, good evening. How are you? And thanks for having me on.
Pleasure. You would have heard a lot of that from the Minister. It all sounds pretty promising. You're pretty happy?
Isn't it refreshing? Unfortunately, and particularly when there was that initial debate whether Darren Chester should stay, I was adamant that we wouldn't need this Royal Commission if the Minister was doing his job. And it's just refreshing hearing Andrew Gee already frogging a hot water, being able to identify some of the key issues that we've been banging our head against a brick wall for years now.
It's taken him a while, hasn't it?
Yes.
Well, here we are. What are your hopes that can come out of this?
Look, so as far as the conditions being set for the systemic changes needed, these terms of reference have given me new hope in that the government has listened to the submissions provided. With the Voice of a Veteran team, we compiled 865 submissions and provided them direct to the Attorney-General, including a summary document that had some key recommendations. And all of those recommendations are within this terms of reference that was released today, including some key changes to terminology. And it's really been great to be able to provide that feedback to those veterans and family members that they have been able to contribute to this. And then the appointment of the eminent three commissioners to the panel, it's such a great mix of that investigative background that's going to be so key to this, combined with the mental health expertise and just the eminence of these individuals, and particularly them not having any form of association to defence, really helps with the cultural change that must accompany this and be afforded the opportunity to be done so with the trust from the start to really encourage veterans to now come forward and provide their submissions.
Yeah, that's really good. I'm so glad that you are pleased with the choice of Royal Commissioners, because if that didn't get off to a good start, things wouldn't work out too well. You might have heard me raise the issue with the Minister of Homelessness. Why is it then veterans? Is it the traumatic stress, the mental health issues? But we've got to fix that, don't we? We've got such a broad homelessness problem, and then veterans are overrepresented. Yeah,
I actually have to help out on this one because those statistics that were drawn from that survey have actually been a rod for our backs that's been smacking in the wrong places, because unfortunately when the survey for those statistics was conducted, veterans were classified as homeless if they weren't residing in somewhere that they had their name on the lease, or they were staying with someone else, or they were literally in between moving from posting locations.
Right.
So there is definitely a homelessness problem within veterans, but those numbers unfortunately are way blown out in the wrong direction. But absolutely, and you touched on it before with the Minister, there still is a homelessness problem, and particularly as we look at these systemic issues that lead to, and these key traumatic issues that lead to ultimate suicide, they come down to those Maslow hierarchy of needs, those key and essential elements, including accommodation, finance, family support, that we really need to better address because they don't just affect the veteran, they affect the entire family household. And previously we've been looking too narrowly just on the veteran and on things like combat PTSD, as opposed to the huge mental and emotional things veterans go through transitioning from a life in service where they're accountable, where they're valued, where they are required to perform each day to the highest levels of achievement, through to a life after service that you're very readily found to be irrelevant. And having to just spend your days taking your dogs for a walk and smelling the roses. And the craziest part is that's actually some of the hardest parts, when you're not actually relevant in everyday life.
Yeah, and it's interesting, when I was looking through the terms of reference today, it talks about pre-service, service, transition and post-service, these very distinct areas. But as a civilian, I would look at it and think, okay, with the nature of the work, surely these people and their mental health is looked after post-service. Why have we got this so wrong for so long?
Well, we failed to do what everyone's taught when they're doing critical problem solving, and that's actually define the problem. What we keep doing is defining the problem as PTSD and combat trauma. And there is definitely post-traumatic stress disorder from combat-specific trauma. But unfortunately, for instance, and we also have to break these down into the different demographics. For myself, I served on 4 tours to Afghanistan, 1 to Iraq, took lives, led men in combat, lost one of my best. Now, I'm not traumatised by those experiences. I'm literally traumatised when I receive a phone call from a different delegate within DVA who's lost my paperwork and my claim takes 18 months to be processed. There's literally this emotional reaction at a point in time when I realised I'm not actually the best at everything outside of my life in service, whereas my life in service was the best version of me. And you actually go through this identity crisis. You go through this loss of purpose crisis. And you're within, in service, you're within a system that has you completely conditioned to compartmentalise your emotions, but has you at the highest levels of physical and mental resilience. And then we get into the wider society, and not only have we always compartmentalised our emotions, but the entirety of society is fueled by emotions. Everything is emotional decisions. Everything we see in the media and social media is fueled by or fueling emotions. And all of a sudden, we are thrust into this emotional maturity as mature-age people, and we struggle with actually struggling ourselves, and we just put ourselves in boxes, and then we end up throwing ourselves out with the bathwater. So it's really a complicated.
Yeah, of course.
But the funny thing is, you actually speak to any veterans, and we'll be able to break it down for you in practical, pragmatic ways. That so many of this is just conversations and cultural training we can push up into service before people are thinking about transitioning. But until this point in time, people haven't listened to us. People haven't walked in our shoes, and people haven't provided us the authority to be able to give back and help out where it's needed. So we had to call a Royal Commission, and here we are.
Exactly. Well, let's hope this achieves some of those outcomes. And as you pointed, I mean, that's great. That's fascinating insight. It really is. And one of the keys being everyone's experience will be different. Thank you. Thank you for your service, and thank you for your insight today. I hope you get some comfort and some real outcomes from this Royal Commission. Thanks for your time, Heston.
Thank you so much.
Heston Russell, retired Special Forces Major and founder of Voice of a Veteran. And if our discussion has raised any issues for you, 13 11 14 is the lifeline number. And there's another organisation called Open Arms. They are happy to take your call, 1-800-011-046.